What do you tell people to do who may, especially nowadays, and who knows, maybe it's from the GMO foods, whatever, but people that have food allergies, food sensitivities, what do you recommend for them?
Funny you should mention because we have one of those in our family. Glenn Tate is gluten intolerant.
Hmm.
So he jokes about he's a bit of a, joking about he's a bit of a snowflake that way. So it's one of those prep what you need. So when we found out and realized that that was really a problem, I'm not going to go stockpiling a whole bunch of flour. I'm not going to go stockpiling bunches of those foods. You prep what you need. You prep the food that one tastes good to you for sure, and certainly, adjust to your allergies. So that's just common sense too. And what's nice is that more and more these days, I would say there's, I think about, gosh, 10 years ago when if you were gluten intolerant, your choices were disgusting and not so good and tasted like cardboard. Food companies have really adjusted to some of these pretty common allergies, which is good. So yeah,
Yeah.
prep what you need.
Well, and I think it's important too for people to um, find out what they're, and you don't necessarily have to go have an allergy test done,
Right.
but be real about, try an elimination diet at one point and see what foods you're sensitive to. I'm the same way on gluten. I don't eat, I
Yeah.
will occasionally, like, I don't know, if you go to a restaurant and they bring out that loaf of like really great smelling fresh bread and
Mhm.
the butter, like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have a piece of bread. But by and large, yeah, I notice a difference with me when I eat that stuff. I notice that, my stomach doesn't feel as great. It just, I feel tired. I feel kind of sick. So, and I
No,
guess that's like you said, prep for that stuff because that's why we call it preparedness.
yeah, exactly. And you bring up a good point. Think about, I mean, as much as it's like, yeah, get some shelf stable food, which could be some of these, MRE kind of things that you may not be used to eating, but try to prep the food that you eat so you don't create like a gastrointestinal reaction, and try to eat clean because those are the foods that are easier to prep. They're easier to grow, they're easier to reproduce when you get to the point where you're like starting to think about sustaining your food supply if we have a long-term sort of situation. Yeah,
What do you mean by eating clean?
eating clean, just those basic foods.
Yeah.
When you pick up a package, let me look around. I'm seeing a package of food over here. I can tell you right now from here, it has probably more than 20 ingredients in it. It's probably
Right.
pretty processed. Eating clean, like some foods that are more basic, that are not so processed, that are easier. And those are typically the ones that are easier to grow. I can grow food in my garden. I can produce food out of the animals that I grow that are easier and less processed. So those are the typical types of food that you're not going to have a major reaction to, right? So
Yeah.
it's
The
hard
more
though.
the
That's like a fourth level of prepping though too. Go ahead.
But I think that's important. I think that's
Hmm.
you know, it's kind of interesting that where a lot of people in the preparedness community talk about the GMOs and they're putting this in our food and they're putting that in our food, but then we'll go out and grab a bunch of and I'm not above it either. There's
Right.
times I love Doritos and there's times like I'm just having a bag of Doritos. Like it's just gonna happen. But by and large, I I did it with my PTSD. I noticed that when I would eat processed foods, my post traumatic stress would get like my reaction to it. I'd get agitated and all that. So I started doing that and cleaning up my diet. And now I eat I buy meat and I buy vegetables, and that's pretty much what I eat now. And I I'm having a guest come on. I'm recording it on Monday. Nikos, who's lives in the Ukraine. It's one of the
Hmm.
things he's talked about is the big change over there with a lot of the people is they're eating far less like processed foods and everything because it's relief efforts, right? They're getting in, what can you get them? Hey, here's a ton of vegetables, here's a ton of rice, very minimal stuff, which I think that's super important.
Yep. Absolutely agree.